It was a chilly Thursday morning in a small coffee shop on the corner of Pine and Maple Streets. Emma, a barista with bright eyes and a warm smile, stood behind the counter, watching the first customers filter in. The aroma of brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the sweetness of freshly baked pastries. It was an ordinary day until it wasn't. The bell above the door jingled as a tall man walked in. He was dressed in a worn leather jacket and wore a cap that hid most of his face. Without hesitation, he approached the counter. Emma greeted him cheerfully, ready to take his order, but as she looked into his eyes, she sensed something off. It wasn't just the way he stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. There was a tension radiating from him, something that made her feel uneasy. Hi," he said, his voice low and clipped. "Sure thing, that'll be $2, Emma replied, trying to shake off the feeling. She reached for the coffee cup and began pouring. As she did, she saw him glance around the shop. His gaze landed on a group of college students in the corner, laughing and chatting. A shadow crossed his face. For a moment, Emma felt as if she were watching a scene in a movie where something dangerous loomed just out of sight. He looked back at her, his demeanor shifting. He asked, his tone now more demanding. "I'm sorry," Emma began, but before she could finish, he interrupted. His voice was harsher now, and Emma's heart began to race. She sensed a spark of anger simmering just beneath the surface, waiting to ignite. "Okay, but we don't offer almond milk," she explained, trying to maintain her calm. His eyes narrowed. "I don't want that." Emma nodded, handing him the cup. "Here you go," she said softly. He snatched the cup from her hand, not caring to look her in the eye. "I said I'm not paying for this," he spat, his irritation boiling over. The shift in energy around them was palpable. The laughter from the students faded into an uncomfortable silence. Emma felt her stomach knot up, heat creeping into her face. She had worked in customer service long enough to know that some customers would push boundaries, but this felt different. His anger was heavy and unforgiving. "I can't do that," she replied, her voice trembling slightly now. He leaned over the counter, invading her space. "You think you can just refuse to serve me?" His words stung, striking a nerve. Emma fought to keep her composure as she stood her ground. "I'm not saying that, it's just how it works here." His expression darkened, his jaw clenching in frustration. The atmosphere in the shop felt electric, like the lull before a storm. Emma felt the eyes of the other customers on her, waiting for what would happen next. He shouted, the anger spilling over like a boiling pot. At that moment, Emma's manager, Tom, stepped into the scene. He was a middle-aged man with kindness etched into his features, and when he sensed the tension rising, he quickly approached. He asked, his voice steady but firm. "Girl thinks she can just refuse me service," the man shot back, almost spitting the words. Tom turned his attention to Emma, who looked visibly shaken. "No," she replied, her voice steadier now, though still laced with anxiety. "I told him we don't have almond milk." Tom's gaze shifted back to the man. "Listen, sir, we can't give service without payment." The man stepped closer, almost leaning over the counter as his frustration boiled over. "You think you can just treat people like this?" Emma could feel her heartbeat quicken, the tension crackling in the air. She had always believed in the mantra that the customer is always right, but this felt different. There was a line, and this man was crossing it. "Sir," Tom said, remaining calm, "we want to help you, but you need to treat my staff with respect." For a moment, the room felt frozen. The tension hung in the air like a heavy cloak. Emma watched a flicker of doubt flash across the man's face, as if he were weighing his next move. He challenged, looking back and forth between Tom and Emma. Tom stood firm, unyielding. "What I'm going to do is ask you to leave if you don't want to pay." The man took a step back, looking more troubled than before. It was as if the anger that had been driving him began to fade, replaced by something more vulnerable. He glanced at the students still watching from the corner, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "Just give me the damn coffee," he muttered, his voice low now. Tom and Emma exchanged a glance. Tom asked. For a moment there was silence, the weight of the situation palpable. The man stood there looking lost. Was it anger, frustration, or something deeper that none of them could quite name? He sighed, running a hand through his hair as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "No," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just," and with that he turned to leave. The bell jingled again as he exited the shop, the door closing behind him. The tension that had hung so heavily inside dissipated, leaving behind a strange mix of relief and unease. Emma let out a breath she didn't even know she was holding. "Thank you," she said to Tom, her voice shaking slightly. Tom offered her a reassuring smile. "You did great, Emma. You stood your ground, and that's important." As the morning rush continued, the shop slowly returned to normalcy. The laughter from the college students resumed, and the warmth of the coffee shop wrapped around Emma like a comforting blanket. Yet she couldn't shake the weight of what had just happened. What had pushed that man to the brink? Why had he thought he could treat her that way? Later that day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma found herself replaying the events in her mind. The man in his worn leather jacket and angry outbursts had seemed like an adversary, yet she couldn't help but wonder what lay beneath his surface. Was he fighting more than just for coffee? Could it be that he was wrestling with something much deeper and darker? In the following days, she thought about him often. She saw the same anger in the news, in stories of people struggling to cope with life, the pressures, the disappointments. she began to wonder, how often do we let our emotions govern our actions? How many times do we take our frustrations out on others, not realizing that they carry their own burdens? Weeks passed, and the coffee shop continued to bustle with customers. Emma smiled and served each one with the same warmth she always had. And though she encountered all sorts of people, kind, rude, indifferent, she now viewed each interaction through a different lens. One day she spotted a familiar face at the entrance. It was him, the same man in the leather jacket. This time he looked different. His posture was less aggressive, and he even seemed hesitant as he approached the counter. Emma's heart raced. She remembered the way he had burst into the shop, anger spilling over like molten lava. Hi, he said awkwardly, as if the words were foreign to him. Hi, Emma managed to reply, her heart pounding. She wondered if he knew how much he had affected her. He hesitated, glancing around as if unsure of what to say. I came back to apologize, he said, his voice low. Emma looked into his eyes and felt something shift, a flicker of understanding, perhaps. I appreciate that, she said, surprised by her own calmness. He nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing. Can I get a coffee? Of course, Emma said, a small smile breaking through. As she prepared his order, she felt a strange twist in her heart. Perhaps he had been battling something far more complex. Maybe we all were. And maybe, just maybe, those moments of anger and frustration were just cries for help wrapped in a jagged exterior. When she handed him the steaming cup, he looked a little softer, a little more human than he had before. Thanks, he said, genuine this time. As he walked away, Emma felt a warmth rise within her, a sense of understanding that went beyond their brief encounter. In a world where everyone had their struggles, where kindness often felt scarce, she realized that opening her heart could bridge even the widest gaps. With each passing day, as she served coffee and shared smiles, Emma hoped to create a little more understanding, a little more empathy. After all, sometimes people just needed a moment to breathe, a chance to turn their anger into something softer, something real. And sometimes a simple cup of coffee could be the start of that journey. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a small, bustling diner, the kind of place where the clatter of plates harmonized with the sizzling sounds from the kitchen. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, casting a warm glow over the diner's faded red booths. Emma, a waitress with an enthusiastic smile and an easy laugh, was busy balancing her tray as she made her way through the sea of customers. Each step was a dance, a rhythm she perfected over the years. But then the bell above the door jingled, and a man walked in who changed everything. He had an unkempt beard, wild hair, and wore a tattered hoodie that seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes darted around the room, landing on Emma with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see right through her cheerful facade. She approached him with her usual smile. Hey there, he stayed quiet, his gaze burning into hers, uncomfortable, like a weight pressing down on her. Finally he spoke, his voice low and gruff. I want a burger, no pickles, no onions. Emma nodded, trying to shake off the unease. Sure thing, his voice rose, surprising both of them. The diner quieted as heads turned toward their direction. She felt a flush creep up her neck. All right, just a burger, she replied, trying to keep her tone light while masking her discomfort. I'll take a soda, he snapped, the corners of his mouth tight and unforgiving. Emma noted the way he spoke, sharp and impatient, like a coiled spring ready to snap. 50 please, she said, cheerful but firm. For a moment he just stared at her, eyes narrowing. I don't have any money, he said abruptly. Emma felt a jolt of frustration. His demeanor changed in an instant. He leaned closer, invading her space, dark eyes flashing with anger. You think you're special because you wear that uniform. Emma felt her heart race, her instincts kicking in. I can't do that, we have rules here. At that moment, a bead of sweat trickled down her back. She sensed that something was brewing beneath the surface, a storm about to break. The other customers had returned to their meals, but she could feel their eyes silently watching. It was as if the air had thickened, turning heavy and thick with tension. He leaned in even closer. You think you can just refuse me? Sir, she started, but he cut her off, his voice like a knife. Save it, just give me the burger. For the briefest moment, Emma felt a wave of fear wash over her. She had faced difficult customers before, but this was different. His anger was raw, almost primal, and she wondered if he might lash out in ways she didn't expect. Listen, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I have to serve paying customers. He shot back, eyes narrowing into slits. His rage rippled through the small diner. As he spoke, something in her snapped. I'm not refusing to help. The words spilled out of her, filled with a passion she didn't realize she had. This is how it works. The tension hung in the air, and customers paused yet again, sensing that something had shifted. The man's face hardened, but before he could respond, her manager, a sturdy man named Greg, stepped in. He asked, his tone authoritative yet calm. Witnessed this type of encounter before, but knew every situation was unique. The man yelled, pointing an accusing finger at Emma. Greg turned to Emma first. No, I just told him he can't have it for free, she insisted, her voice rising as adrenaline coursed through her. Greg asked the man, trying to maintain control of the situation. The man's eyes shifted, calculating as if weighing his options. I don't have to answer to you, he sneered. Greg remained unfazed and took a step closer. You're in a diner and you need to pay for your meal. Everyone else here does. A challenge flickered in the man's eyes. Are you really going to back her up? I don't, nor do I need to, Greg replied, unyielding. He crossed his arms over his chest, silently communicating support for Emma. But I do know that anger isn't the way to solve it. The man's breathing was heavy now, frustration etching deep lines across his face. You think you're so high and mighty, huh? Greg suggested. Everyone has a story. For a moment, the man seemed to deflate, the anger slowly ebbing away, replaced by something more vulnerable, a hint of sadness or maybe desperation. But before he could respond, Emma found courage surging within her. It doesn't matter what you're going through, she said, her voice steady. It's not okay to take it out on others. The eyes of the diner flicked back and forth as people absorbed this strange exchange. Would he lash out again, or could they find common ground? The man's posture shifted, uncertainty flickering across his face. I'm just trying to get by, he murmured, almost to himself. Emma's heart softened. We all are, she said gently, sensing that this was the kind of moment people often miss, the moment where they might just connect, share something human. Greg watched, a small nod of approval crossing his face. How about you tell us what you need? The man hesitated, glancing around at the other customers, their eyes filled with concern yet also curiosity. It was a moment of vulnerability, and he seemed to be piecing it together in real time. I just lost my job, he finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. As the words left his mouth, it was as if the tension had evaporated, replaced by understanding. Emma could feel a connection forming, a story unfolding. In that diner at that very moment, they were no longer a waitress and an angry customer, but two people navigating life's difficulties. I'm really sorry to hear that, Emma said, her tone softening further. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more human than he had just moments ago. Greg smiled gently, creating space for the man's honesty. It's okay to feel that way, everyone has their battles. The man looked at Emma again, and this time there was a hint of remorse behind his eyes. I'm sorry for snapping at you. Emma felt a warmth spreading through her chest. We all have moments when we don't manage ourselves as well as we want to. He took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling around them. Thanks, with a small smile, Emma asked, how about I get you a burger on the house? The man blinked, surprise flashing across his face. Are you serious? I want to, she said sincerely. I can do that, he said, a reluctant grin breaking through. As Emma turned to place the order, the atmosphere in the diner felt lighter. The tension that had once boiled over into anger transformed into a connection that was both unexpected and beautiful. The journey from hostility to understanding had forged a bond over a simple burger. When she returned with the meal, the man looked genuinely grateful, as if the weight of his struggles had lifted, even if just a little. I really appreciate this, he said, taking the first bite and savoring it as if it were a precious gift. You're welcome, she replied. They shared a brief laugh, a moment of shared humanity in a world that often felt divided. As the diner buzzed back to life, Emma looked around, the clanking dishes and chatter of laughter filling the air. No matter how difficult the encounter had started, it ended with a reminder that everyone carried their burdens, yet it was how they chose to share those burdens that made all the difference. It was one of those moments that would stick with her, a story etched in the memory of the diner. Each person left with their own journeys ahead, hopeful that maybe, just the smallest bit, things would be okay. And for Emma, it was a lesson that just beneath the surface, there was always more than met the eye. It was another busy Saturday morning in the heart of downtown, and the diner buzzed with life. The scent of sizzling bacon mixed with the rich aroma of fresh coffee, wrapping around the customers like a warm blanket. Laughter intertwined with the clinking of silverware, filling the room with a comforting rhythm. Emma stood behind the counter, her apron cinched tightly, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. She greeted each customer with a smile that could brighten even the cloudiest day. But then the bell above the door jingled, and in walked a man who shifted the atmosphere entirely. He was tall and scruffy, with wild hair sticking out in all directions and clothes that looked like they had seen better days. The energy around him felt heavy, a sense of impatience radiating from his presence as he scanned the diner, finally locking eyes with Emma. She approached him, her smile still in place, though she felt a flutter of unease. Hi there. For a moment he didn't reply. His gaze pierced through her, and the silence stretched so long that it felt almost palpable. Just a coffee, he finally grunted, tossing the words like a grenade into the space between them. Absolutely, she asked, her cheerfulness unwavering. No, just black, he snapped, irritation lining every syllable. Emma nodded, filling a cup with the dark brew. She set it down in front of him, trying to keep the atmosphere light. He stared at her like she had grown a second head. Emma's smile faltered slightly. I'm sorry, but we can't give away coffee for free. He leaned forward, his voice rising in pitch. That voice hit her like a cold splash of water. The energy around him twisted, darkening the cheerful diner as their exchange drew unwanted attention. Emma felt the weight of the other customers' eyes on her, their forks paused midair, sensing the tension brewing like a summer storm. Sir, I'm really sorry, but I can't serve you if you aren't paying, she said, her voice steadying as she reminded herself that she was the one in control here. He slammed a fist on the counter, making her jump. You think you're better than me just because you wear an apron. The atmosphere thickened, and Emma could feel a familiar twinge of fear crawling up her spine. Every instinct told her that this encounter could escalate quickly. This man was unpredictable, but she had learned long ago that she could stand her ground. Listen, I understand you're upset, Emma replied, trying to keep her voice calm and collected. His eyes narrowed into slits. Just then Greg, her manager, walked out from the back. He was a sturdy man with years of experience and a no-nonsense attitude. He strolled over with a confident stride, sensing the tension that had filled the air. Greg asked, his brow furrowing as he focused on the confrontation. The man spat, pointing an accusatory finger at Emma. Greg glanced at Emma, who stood firm, her chin slightly raised. He asked, dissecting the situation in an instant. I told him he can't have it for free, Greg. That's all, she said, her voice gaining strength. With a deep breath, Greg turned his attention back to the man. You need to pay for your coffee, sir. That's how this diner works. The man crossed his arms, his frustration radiating like heat from pavement during a hot summer day. Maybe I don't, Greg replied calmly, but it doesn't excuse disrespecting my staff. Emma watched as the man's expression flickered. The anger that had once consumed him seemed to shift as the reality of being challenged set in. He shot back. True, Greg acknowledged, a hint of empathy in his voice. The words hung heavy in the air. Emma felt the room go still. The diner's lively chatter transformed into a tense silence. The man stood there, visibly wrestling with the facts. Emma sensed his anger melting into something softer, something more human. The man's shoulders slumped slightly, his bravado faltering. You think I want to be here like this? I just lost my job. I'm really sorry to hear that, Emma replied, her tone shifting as the hardness washed away. Greg nodded, sensing the shift. It's tough out there. The man shifted his weight from one foot to the other, looking at Emma and then Greg, vulnerability creeping in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shout. There's no shame in asking for help, Greg said gently, his demeanor creating a safe space for the man to breathe. Emma watched as the man's defenses crumbled, and she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe they could turn this confrontation into something positive. She offered, a small smile breaking through. The man blinked in surprise, a look of disbelief crossing his face. Really? Yeah, Emma said, her voice earnest. Let's try to start fresh. He hesitated, looking at her like she had just offered him a lifeline. I want to, she said. Let's talk. Maybe I can help you find some resources. For a moment, the tension that had once filled the diner transformed into a fragile connection. The man seemed to let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thank you, he said gently. As Emma poured the coffee, she took a deep breath herself. She knew that empathy was a powerful tool, capable of bridging divides in unexpected ways. When she handed him the steaming cup, their fingers brushed slightly, and a small spark of understanding passed between them. I really am sorry for how I acted, he said again, taking a sip of the coffee like it was a rare treat. And I'm sorry for being firm, Emma replied, feeling the warmth of compassion spreading between them. But rules are there for a reason. He nodded, the weight in his eyes lifting a little. Life can deal some tough hands. Time seemed to stretch around them as customers resumed their chatter, the din of life returning. Emma felt a sense of relief. This moment of connection might be just what he needed to reignite his path forward. Seeing the transformation take place, Greg smiled softly, a sense of pride washing over him. If you ever need anything else, don't hesitate to ask, he said, genuine concern lining his voice. The man's tough exterior cracked further, revealing a hint of gratitude. I will, thank you again. Emma shrugged playfully. Every little bit helps. As he finished his coffee, Emma realized she had needed this interaction just as much as he had. It was a reminder that behind every anger-fueled outburst was a human story, waiting to be understood. In today's world, that was more important than the black and white lines of policy. When he finally stood up to leave, there was a flicker in his eyes, a semblance of hope that hadn't been there before. Take care, he said, his voice sincere. Emma returned the sentiment, warmth spreading through her chest. You too. As the door closed behind him, the diner felt lighter, the chatter one again filling the room. The encounters of the day had shifted something within her, the understanding of the struggles many of them faced. In a world filled with chaos, compassion could weave through the cracks like sunlight. Greg turned to Emma, pride shining in his eyes. You handled that beautifully, Emma. Thanks, Greg. It was instinct, I guess, she replied, still riding the wave of adrenaline. Trust your instincts. With the day still buzzing around them, Emma smiled, energized by the unexpected turn of events. As she continued to serve customers, a sense of gratitude filled her heart. Each encounter had the power to shape and shift lives, and she vowed to see the humanity in each person who walked through that door. And as the hours passed, she found herself not just serving plates of food and cups of coffee, but also a little bit of empathy and understanding, a community slowly coming together, one small act at a time. It was a bustling Friday evening at Mike's Cafe, the kind of place where the neon lights flickered against the twilight sky. The diner was packed, the sound of clinking cutlery mixing with laughter and chatter. Emma, a waitress with a bright demeanor and a passion for people, glided from table to table, balancing plates and refilling coffee cups with effortless grace. She thrived in the lively atmosphere, drawing energy from the connections she made with customers. But then the bell above the door jingled and everything shifted. A man walked in, his presence cutting through the noise like a knife. He was disheveled, wild hair sticking up in all directions, clothes that looked like they had been through a war. His eyes, however, were what made her stomach twist. They burned with a kind of intensity that made her uneasy. Emma approached him cautiously, keeping her smile in place despite the knot in her gut. "Hi there, welcome to Mike's." He didn't respond immediately, his gaze darting around the cafe as if he were sizing everyone up. Finally he spoke, his voice low and edged. "I'll take a burger." "Sure thing," Emma asked, hoping to keep the mood light. "No, just the burger," he snapped, his impatience bubbling beneath the surface. "50, she replied, pulling out her order pad, his face twisted into a scowl. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "I'm sorry, but we can't serve food without payment." The air around them thickened, and the laughter from nearby tables faded into an uncomfortable silence. The man leaned closer, his face inches from hers. Emma stood taller, her heart racing. He challenged, his voice rising, drawing more eyes toward them. Emma replied, her mind racing. She dealt with difficult customers before, but there was something different about this man. He pressed, anger crackling in the air like static electricity. Just then Greg, her manager, emerged from the kitchen, sensing the tension. He was a sturdy man with salt and pepper hair, known for his calm demeanor. He asked, his voice steady, anchoring the storm brewing around them. The man shouted, pointing at Emma. Greg looked at Emma, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and understanding. "I told him he can't have it for free, Greg." She fought to keep her voice steady. Her manager knew she was not one to back down from a challenge. "Sir," Greg said, shifting his focus, "this is a diner." The man stepped forward, his irritation boiling over. "You don't know what it's like." Emma felt a rush of resentment. "None of that gives you the right to treat us like this." Greg nodded, backing her up. The man's face flushed, and for a moment Emma thought he might explode, but something in Greg's tone seemed to break through. He stood there, visibly wrestling with his emotions, anger battling with something deeper and more vulnerable. He shouted again, but this time his voice wavered. Emma realized he was fighting more than just a hunger for food. He was grappling with something larger, something that had pushed him to this point of desperation. "Maybe we can help," Greg suggested carefully, sensing the shift. "What if we find a way to get you a meal?" The man blinked, the volatility in his eyes beginning to fade. "Because we all deserve kindness," Emma chimed in, "and sometimes it just takes one person to make a difference." He hesitated, looking around the diner as though seeing it for the first time, the families enjoying meals, the friends laughing over coffee. "I guess I lost sight of that," he muttered, shock registering on his face. Greg stepped closer. "Life can be overwhelming. We all have days where things feel impossible, but you can reach out." For the first time, the man's posture relaxed, and the anger that had clouded his face began to drain away, revealing a flicker of humanity. I'm really struggling." "I'm sorry to hear that," Emma said softly. "It's tough out there." His expression shifted again, blending vulnerability with uncertainty. "I understand," Emma replied, her heart softening. Greg cleared his throat. "What do you really need?" The man looked taken aback by their offer. Absolutely," Emma said, the warmth of her smile returning. "Everyone deserves a meal. How about I get you that burger?" "Why would you do that?" "You hardly know me," he said, still doubtful. "Because people need to look out for each other," Greg added. The man's shoulders shifted, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "Thank you." As Emma prepared the burger, she felt a connection growing between them, a bridge made of understanding and compassion instead of anger and suspicion. When she served him the meal, he took a moment to appreciate it, staring at the plate like it was the most precious thing in the world. "I didn't expect this." "No one should feel that way," Emma replied, observing the way the tension in his body slowly ebbed. He took a bite, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Emma laughed, a sound that drew smiles from nearby tables. "See," as the man ate, the atmosphere in the cafe began to shift back to normal. The chatter resumed, filling the space with laughter and warmth. Emma felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had turned a moment of anger into a moment of understanding. He said between bites. Emma replied, curious, "What made you want to help me?" Emma paused, contemplating her response. "Because I believe we all have stories." The man fell silent as if her words resonated deeply. "Absolutely," she affirmed. "People are more than the situations they find themselves in." "Wow," he said with a hint of admiration. "I'll remember that." As he finished his meal, Emma felt a wave of satisfaction wash over her. There was something powerful in that moment. A chance encounter had transformed from conflict to connection, two lives intersecting in a meaningful way. "Thank you for everything," he said, standing up and looking more at ease. "I hope you do," Emma said, her heart swelling with optimism. "There's enough hardship in the world." With a genuine smile, the man left the cafe, the door jingling behind him. Emma watched him go, something inside her feeling changed. Life was unpredictable, but moments like this reminded her of the good that could come when people chose kindness over confrontation. Greg approached her, his face warm with pride. "You did a fantastic job, Emma. Thanks, Greg, it felt like the right thing to do, she replied, beaming. That's what this diner is about, being a community. With the day winding down, Emma finished cleaning tables, her mind racing with thoughts. She knew that everyone she encountered had their own struggles and stories, and she resolved to carry that understanding with her moving forward. As customers continued to filter in and out, laughter and warmth filled Mike's cafe. Emma felt empowered by the day's experience, knowing that the smallest moments of connection could create ripples far beyond what they could see. In the end, the diner wasn't just a place for food. It was a sanctuary, a space where lives intertwined, where empathy flowed like coffee, warm and comforting. And in a world filled with chaos, moments of compassion were the threads that wove them all together. That night, as Emma finally turned off the lights and locked the door, she took one last look at the cafe. It was more than just a job, it was a realm of endless possibilities where hope sparked in the most unexpected places. And as she walked into the cool night air, she carried a simple truth with her. Sometimes it takes just one person willing to see and understand another to change everything. That was the power of compassion, and she was ready to embrace it in every encounter to come. The bell above the door jingled as a man walked into the diner, instantly changing the atmosphere. It was a bright Saturday morning at Marla's Cafe, a cozy corner spot known for its fresh coffee and cheerful waitstaff. Emma, the waitress with a smile that could light up a room, was busy serving regulars and taking orders, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail, her apron stained with traces of flour from the morning's baking. But as the man stepped inside, a wave of unease swept through the diner. He was tall and lanky, with a battered baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and an unsettling aura that turned heads. He approached the counter, and Emma felt the air shift around him, as if time slowed down. "Coffee," he demanded, his voice a low rumble. Emma replied, her cheerful tone masking the flicker of apprehension in her stomach. She poured a steaming cup and set it down in front of him. The man stared at her as if she had just spoken a foreign language. "I don't have any money," he said flatly. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. "I'm sorry, but we can't give away coffee for free." There was a firmness in her voice, an unyielding resolve. His expression darkened, and she noticed the tension in his posture, as if he were coiling up like a spring ready to snap. He challenged, his voice rising. The laughter and chatter from the other diners fell silent. All eyes turned towards them, sensing that a storm was brewing. Emma held her ground, praying that her confidence would drown out her fear. "I really can't serve you if you don't pay," she reiterated, hoping the firmness in her tone would calm him. "You're just another stuck-up waitress thinking you're better than anyone," he spat back, taking a step closer, invading her personal space. His breath, tinged with alcohol, reached her before he did. "Look, I'm just doing my job," she said, feeling her heart race. "Why?" He leaned in, words sharper than knives. Just then, Greg, her manager, appeared from the kitchen, sensing the rising tension. He was a tall man with a strong presence, known for his calm authority. He asked, stepping in before things could escalate further. The man shouted, gesturing wildly at Emma. Greg asked, turning to her. "I offered him coffee, but he doesn't have any money," she explained, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. Greg shifted his focus back to the man. "Sir, you need to pay to receive service here." A flicker of frustration crossed the man's face. "You think you can just throw me out because I don't have cash?" Emma felt the weight of his words. She wanted to help, but the unsettled energy in the air suggested he wasn't ready to listen. "It doesn't matter what you're going through, you can't expect to be served without paying," she said, her tone firm but compassionate. "Listen, I'm not looking for a handout," he said, voice steadying slightly. "I just wanted a little decency." Greg took a step closer, approaching the man with a calm demeanor. "Everyone deserves decency, but we operate a business." The man finally backed down a little, shoulders dropping slightly, but his eyes were still filled with frustration. "I just lost my job." Emma's heart softened at his admission. "I'm really sorry to hear that," she replied, the sincerity in her voice breaking through the tension. He retorted, anger flaring up again, but there was a hint of vulnerability in his voice. It felt as though a storm was raging within him and the wind was picking up. "Sir, I get it. We all have our struggles," Greg said gently. The man's face twisted as he wrestled with his emotions. "I'm just tired." Emma's heart ached for him. "You're not ignored. We see you." At this, something in his expression shifted. He wasn't just angry, he was weary. The defenses he had built up around himself were beginning to crack. "I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice suddenly small. "Maybe you don't have to keep fighting by yourself," Emma said softly. "There are people who care." For a moment, silence enveloped them. The chatter of the diner faded into the background as everyone watched this unexpected moment of connection unfold. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world pressing against them, and made a choice. She said, her voice steady, "I'll get you that coffee on the house." The man blinked, clearly surprised. "Yeah," Emma said with a soft smile. He hesitated, vulnerability creeping back into his eyes. "Maybe I've been too quick to judge. This is..." Greg nodded, pleased with Emma's gesture. "And if you ever want to talk about what you're going through, we're here." At that moment, something shifted within the man. It was as if the storm inside him began to settle. I'll try," he finally said, his voice cracking slightly. Emma flashed him a genuine smile as she poured another cup of coffee, placing it in front of him with a sense of pride. Life's hard enough without people tearing each other down. He took a sip from the steaming cup, a look of disbelief washing over his features. Wow, you really are a nice person. I didn't expect that today. As he drank, the tension began to dissipate, the air transforming from hostile to hopeful. Emma felt the difference in the room as others returned to their meals, soft conversations bubbling up once again. He asked suddenly. "Emma," she replied, her heart warmed by the connection. "Emma," he repeated as if savoring the name. "Thank you." He smiled, the weight of his earlier anger replaced by a glimmer of gratitude. "I'll remember." As he finished his coffee and stood up to leave, there was a lightness in his step. "I'm really grateful for this. Good luck and thank you for sharing your story with us," Emma called out, watching him walk toward the door. The bell jingled again, and as he stepped outside, a sense of peace washed over her. Greg walked over, leaning against the counter with a proud smile. "You handled that beautifully, Emma. I feel like I know him now more than I ever would have if I had just refused him," she replied, looking back at the empty seat where he had perched just minutes ago. "Exactly," Greg said, nodding his agreement. "We often see anger before we see someone struggle." As she resumed her duties, the din of the cafe felt warm and familiar again. The laughter of children, the clinking of dishes, and the gentle hum of voices surrounded her like a safety net. Emma felt a new sense of responsibility to carry forward that moment of kindness and awareness. With each customer that walked through the door, she kept an eye out for others who might be struggling. The world could be heavy, and while their burdens were invisible, Emma realized she could be a light, shining hope on those who might feel lost in darkness. As the day wound down, she reflected on the power of connection, of shared humanity. Life was full of unpredictable encounters, and within those moments lay opportunities to create change, no matter how small. That night, as she locked the door to the cafe, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She was ready to carry that spirit forward, knowing that even a spark of kindness could ignite a flame of hope in someone who desperately needed it. And in that moment, Emma understood. The world may be full of challenges, but in every heart there was a story waiting to be discovered. And sometimes, all it took was a single act of kindness to make all the difference. The diner was buzzing with activity when she walked in, but when he entered, everything changed. It was a late Monday morning at Janie's Cafe, a familiar spot tucked away on a quiet street. Regulars filled the booths, chatting and laughing over plates of pancakes and steaming cups of coffee. Emma, a waitress known for her sunny demeanor, navigated the small space with ease, taking orders and refilling drinks. But when the man stepped through the door, the energy shifted. He was scruffy, with a worn-out jacket that had seen better days. There was an edge to him, an air of agitation that was impossible to ignore. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, yet in that moment felt like a warning. Emma tried to welcome him with her typical warmth. "Hi there, welcome to Janie's." He didn't respond immediately, his gaze scanning the cafe like he was looking for trouble. Finally, he spoke, his voice grating and harsh. "Sure," she asked, hoping to keep things light. "No, just a burger," he snapped, impatience dripping from his tone. She smiled, gently reaching for her notepad, but instead of pulling out cash, he simply stared at her. "I don't have any money," he replied, almost like it was an everyday occurrence. Emma felt a wave of dread wash over her. "I'm really sorry, but we can't just give you food for free." The mood in the diner shifted dramatically. The laughter faded into an uncomfortable silence, and all eyes began to fixate on their confrontation. Emma's heart raced as the man stepped closer to the counter, his expression darkening. He barked, his anger palpable. Emma stood firm, despite the knot tightening in her stomach. "I'm not refusing you service." He leaned in closer, invading her space. "You think you're better than me? Sir, it's not about that," Emma replied, irritation clashing with her composure. His face twisted with rage, and the tension in the air felt electric. "That's not how this works," she said, the firmness in her voice beginning to crack. Just then, Greg, the manager, emerged from the back, noticing the commotion. Greg was a solid man with a calm demeanor, known for his ability to diffuse tense situations. He asked, stepping closer. The man shouted, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet diner. Greg turned to her, his expression serious. "Told him he cannot have the burger unless he pays for it," she explained, determination flooding through her despite the fear. Greg's eyes turned to the man. "You need to pay for your meal." "Why should I pay when I'm clearly having a tough time?" The man was beginning to shout, his face reddening with frustration. "I understand that you might be having a rough day, but taking it out on my staff isn't going to solve anything," Greg answered, asserting control. The man fumed, the anger swirling in his eyes. "I just lost my job," Emma felt a pang of empathy. "I'm really sorry to hear that," she said, her voice softening. He pressed, his voice dropping but still bitter. She asked, feeling the weight of his words. "My family has had hard times too, but I can't just hand out food." "Listen, I'm just trying to make it through the day," he said, his rage dissipating slightly. "I thought this was a place for people like me." At that moment, Greg stepped in, folding his arms across his chest. "We want to help, but we have to maintain our policies. You're not alone in this." Emma watched as the man's defenses softened. There was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. For a brief moment, the storm inside him settled. "It's just hard," he admitted, almost reluctantly. I get it," Emma said, her voice steady and sincere. "But we're all just trying to get by, right?" As the tension hung in the air, it felt as if time had stopped. Greg glanced at the man, seeing a youth that might have once burned bright, now flickering in despair. He asked gently. The man shifted his gaze, looking around the room at the regulars enjoying their meals. I didn't mean to come in here and make a scene," he murmured. "Then let's make this easier," Greg said, his tone lightening. "Emma here is willing to help." The man blinked, his expression shifting from anger to confusion. "Why not?" "Everyone deserves kindness, even on their worst days," Greg replied. "But in return, I ask that you treat my staff with respect." As Emma prepared the burger, she felt her heart swell. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe this moment of connection would lead the man to realize he didn't have to go through life alone, that there were people willing to help if he let them. When she handed him the burger, the man looked both humbled and relieved. "Thank you," he said, a knot of emotion tightening his throat. "You're welcome," Emma replied, a warm smile spreading across her face. "And remember, you're not alone in this." As he took a bite of the burger, something shifted in him. The change was subtle, but it was there. His shoulders relaxed, the anger that had consumed him dissipated completely. "This is actually really good," he said, savoring the flavors as if it were the first meal he had eaten in days. "We're glad you like it," Greg said, taking a breath of relief. "You know, we all have struggles. In a way, it brings us together." The man looked thoughtful. "I guess I didn't think about it that way." "Exactly," Emma chimed in. As the man finished his burger, the mood in the diner shifted back to normal. The comforting sound of clinking dishes and soft conversations filled the air again. Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her, knowing they had turned a conflict into a connection. Before long, the man stood to leave, and the atmosphere felt different, lighter somehow. "Thank you," he said, looking both grateful and sheepish. "I really didn't mean to make a scene." "Everyone has bad days," Greg said with a reassuring nod. When the man stepped out the door, the bell jingled again, signaling his departure. Emma watched him go, not just as a customer, but as someone who had transformed through that moment of vulnerability. Greg turned to Emma, pride written all over his face. "You did an amazing job, Emma." "Thanks, Greg," she replied, still feeling the weight of the situation. "Each of us is fighting our own battles, but sometimes those battles become shared experiences," he said gently. As the lunch crowd continued to filter in and out, Emma felt a new sense of responsibility. Every person that walked through the door had their own struggles, their own stories lurking just beneath the surface. It gave her a new perspective on her work. Life continued at Janie's cafe, wall-to-wall with laughter and chatter, but Emma now held a deeper understanding of her role there. A simple burger could be more than just food. It could be a lifeline, an acknowledgement of shared humanity. As the sun began to set outside, casting a golden hue through the windows, Emma wiped down tables and felt a warmth radiating from within. This wasn't just a job to her, it was a place where stories wove together, an opportunity to make a positive impact on the lives of others. That night, as she closed up the cafe and locked the door behind her, she made a promise to herself to carry that spirit of compassion forward. The world was messy, unpredictable, but moments of connection could create ripples of change. And somewhere that man was out there, holding a piece of kindness that might just help him find his way. If nothing else, their encounter had reminded Emma that vulnerability was a strength, and understanding was a choice worth making. In a world filled with noise and anger, moments of connection were the lights that could guide the way home. The bell over the door clanged as he stepped in, and the cheerful atmosphere of the diner instantly shifted. It was a regular Wednesday lunch hour at Rosie's Cafe, a cozy spot known for its homemade pies and friendly staff. The sun streamed through the big windows, illuminating the laughter and chatter from families gathered around booths, enjoying their meals. Emma, a dedicated waitress with an easy smile, was in the zone, floating efficiently between tables, making guests feel special. But that changed the moment he entered. He was tall, scruffy, and his clothes looked like they had been wearing him for longer than a few days. There was something about him that sent a ripple of tension through the room, like the calm before the storm. Emma caught his eye, and every instinct told her something was off. She asked, her voice upbeat even as her stomach nodded slightly. "Yeah, I want a burger," he said, leaning over the counter defiantly. "Sure," Emma replied, trying to keep the mood light. "Just the burger," he snapped, his tone curt. "50, she said, reaching for her order pad. But as she looked up, she noticed the look in his eyes had soured. "I don't have any money," he said flatly, as if that was the end of the conversation. Emma felt her cheeks redden with irritation. His eyes widened, disbelief etched in his features. "Sir, that's our policy. I can't just give you a free meal," she replied, her heart racing as she stood her ground. He leaned in closer, his voice rising. "You think you're better than me?" "Absolutely not," she replied, holding her breath. There was an intensity emanating from him that felt dangerous. He shouted, startling nearby diners. The laughter faded into awkward silence as all eyes turned to their confrontation, tension thick between them. He laughed harshly, an edge to his voice. "You think this is a job? This is my life." Emma's pulse quickened. "I'm not treating you like anything," she maintained, trying to keep her composure. "Why?" His anger hung like a cloud draping over the diner. Just then Greg, the manager, emerged from the kitchen, sensing the rising storm. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with years of experience in the diner business. He asked, placing himself between Emma and the irate customer. He snarled, gesturing wildly at Emma. Greg's brow furrowed as he turned to Emma. "I told him he can't have the burger without paying," she explained, standing tall despite the growing tension. "Sir, we all have our policies here," Greg said, his voice steady. The man's face twisted in anger. "What do you know about tough times?" Emma felt a pang of empathy, a flicker of guilt. She had seen hard times too, more than once. "I'm really sorry you're struggling," she said, her voice softening. "Of course not." His tone dripped with sarcasm, but there was a hint of something deeper hurt maybe. Greg stood his ground. "It's not just about rules, it's about respect." The man's expression wavered, anger battling against something more vulnerable. "You think I enjoy this? I lost my job last week." Emma felt the tension change. "I'm really sorry to hear that," she said gently. He barked back, but there was a crack in his armor now. Greg took a step closer, clearly wanting to defuse the situation. "Look, I want to help, but we have to follow our policies." The man's expression softened for just a moment, as if the weight of his struggles had become too much to bear. "I just wanted a meal." Emma seized the moment, sensing a shift. "How about this? I'll get you a burger on the house." The man blinked, disbelief flickering across his features. "Absolutely," she said, her heart swelling with hope. The tension in his shoulders eased. "Really appreciate it," he said, finally allowing a hint of vulnerability to surface. As Emma prepared the burger, she sensed the atmosphere change even more. What had begun as conflict was transforming into connection. When she returned with the steaming plate, the man took a bite and an expression of surprise washed over his face. "This is actually really good," he said, savoring the flavors as if he hadn't eaten in days. Emma smiled, relief flooding through her. "I didn't expect you to care," he admitted, his voice softer now. "There's more to people than what you see on the surface," Greg said, nodding in agreement. The diner's atmosphere shifted from tense to warm again, the laughter returning as others resumed their meals. Emma felt a sense of peace as the struggles of their earlier confrontation faded, replaced by a moment of connection. The man said, turning to Emma as he finished his meal. She replied with genuine curiosity. "Why did you decide to help me?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I believe everyone has a story. Behind every frustration or anger, there can be pain and struggle." As he absorbed her words, his expression shifted yet again. "Everyone needs a reminder every now and then. Life can be overwhelming and connection can be a powerful healer," Emma said, feeling a spark of something deeper resonate between them. When the man stood up to leave, he looked lighter somehow, almost transformed. "Thank you, truly. Remember, kindness is a choice." "It can change everything," Emma called out after him as he walked toward the door, the bell jingling softly behind him. Greg approached her with pride shining in his eyes. "You handled that with grace, Emma. I just wanted him to know he wasn't alone," she replied, her heart still warm from the encounter. As the day wound down, Emma reflected on the power of connection. The diner was more than just a place to eat. It was a haven for stories that needed to be shared. Every time someone walked through the door, there was an opportunity to make a positive impact. With the sun beginning to set, casting a warm glow through the diner's big windows, Emma realized she was proud to work at Rosie's. Every meal served was a chance to bring light and warmth not just to plate, but also to heart. As the evening crowd began to filter in, she kept that lesson close. Each interaction was a thread connecting them all. Little did they know they were all part of something bigger, a community, and she was right in the middle, weaving a tapestry of compassion and understanding. When Emma finally closed the cafe that night, she felt invigorated. She wasn't just serving food, she was offering kindness, understanding, and a listening ear. The world might be messy, but she was determined to make her corner a little brighter. And as she locked the door and stepped into the cool evening air, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the simplest acts of kindness could spark change, that vulnerability could break down walls, and sometimes the most profound connections could come from the most unexpected places. In that moment, Emma understood. Each person she encountered had a story waiting to be told, and every act of empathy was a step toward healing. Just like the warmth of Rosie's cafe, compassion could be the light that guided them all home. The bell above the diner door chimed, and the atmosphere inside instantly shifted. It was a bustling Wednesday afternoon at Marcy's Diner, a beloved local spot where the clatter of plates blended with laughter and the aromatic scent of bacon filled the air. The sun streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow over the red vinyl booths. Emma, one of the waitresses, was in her zone, moving swiftly between tables, her bright smile a staple among the regulars. But the moment he walked in, everything changed. He was tall and disheveled, with ragged jeans and a hoodie that looked like it hadn't seen a washing machine in a month. His eyes darted around the room, scanning every corner as if seeking something elusive. Emma felt a tremor of unease ripple through her as he approached the counter. Coffee, he grunted, his voice rough like gravel. Emma replied, forcing her usual cheerfulness despite the knot tightening in her stomach. She poured a steaming cup and placed it in front of him. He didn't even look at her. Her heart sank. I'm sorry, but we can't give away coffee for free. Really? His tone turned sharp, slicing through the gentle hum of the diner. I'm just doing my job, Emma said, trying to maintain her composure. Frustration bubbled beneath the surface, but she knew she had to stay calm. He leaned closer, fury manifesting in his posture. You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. At that moment, the laughter in the diner faded. The buzz of conversation hushed into tense silence. Emma felt all eyes shifting toward them, the discomfort palpable. Sir, you need to lower your voice, she insisted, feeling her heart race. Charity. He practically spat the words at her. I'm just asking for a little decency. Greg, the manager, emerged from the kitchen at just the right moment, sensing the tension in the air. He was a sturdy man, comfortable in his authority. He asked, approaching with a calm demeanor. The man shouted, pointing a finger at Emma as if blaming her for all his hardship. Greg asked, his gaze shifting to her. I told him we can't serve coffee without payment, Greg, Emma explained, tension palpable in her voice. Greg turned his attention back to the man. Sir, we can't serve you unless you can pay. That's how this diner works. It's not personal. The man's eyes narrowed, his fists clenching at his sides. You're all the same. His voice rose, trembling with raw emotion. The atmosphere in the diner thickened and Emma's heart raced. She wanted to reach out to understand what he was feeling, but the confrontation was spiraling out of control. I'm sorry you're struggling, she said, her voice wavering. Rules, he spat back. You think I want to be here? Emma hesitated, feeling the weight of his words sink in. Maybe there was more to his anger than she realized. I understand life can be tough, she said carefully. I just want a chance. He stepped closer, the desperation in his voice almost breaking through the anger. Well, we all have our battles, she said, feeling an unexpected pang of empathy. For a moment, silence enveloped them. The tension hung in the air like a thick cloud, and Emma could feel the eyes of the other customers watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The man took a deep breath, the fire in his eyes flickering for just an instant. He asked, his voice dropping slightly. Greg took a step closer, aiming to diffuse the tension. I know that anger isn't going to help you get what you need. The man hesitated, visibly wrestling with his emotions. I didn't come in here looking for a fight, he confessed, his tone softening. Emma's heart ached with understanding. We can't give away food, but I can offer you a meal, she said, surprising even herself with the words. On the house. He looked at her, disbelief spreading across his face. Because everyone deserves a break, she said gently, wishing he could feel the sincerity in her words. As she prepared his order, the shift in energy became palpable. The tension that had filled the diner slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile connection. When she returned with a burger and fries, the man stared at the plate like it was a priceless gift. Thank you, he said, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. You're welcome, Emma replied softly, hoping he would find a glimmer of comfort in the meal. As he took his first bite, the frown on his face began to lift. This is really good, he said, savoring the flavors as if each bite was a small puzzle piece fitting into a larger picture of relief. As the once volatile man found solace in the food, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. The laughter returned, conversations resumed, and the weight that had hung in the air lifted ever so slightly. Emma felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing they had shifted a moment of conflict into something hopeful. He said suddenly, looking up from his meal, his expression softer now. Emma replied, eager to continue the connection. Why did you decide to help me? Most people would have just thrown me out, he asked, genuine curiosity shining through. I think everybody has a story, she said, her heart swelling. And sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to turn someone's day around. He took another bite, contemplating her words. You're right. Occasionally, a moment like this could change everything. Emma could see it in his eyes, a flicker of realization that perhaps he wasn't invisible after all. As he finished the last bite of his burger, he looked genuinely grateful. I'm going to try to do better. Emma smiled, feeling a warmth grow in her chest. That's a great mindset. Just remember, you don't have to face everything alone. The man nodded, his posture less rigid, the tension slowly melting away. Just then, the bell above the door jingled again, and a group of boisterous teenagers walked in, laughing and shouting. The sudden influx of energy created a buzz that filled the diner once more. Emma turned to greet them, but when she looked back, she noticed the man's face had changed. He was staring at the new group, his expression darkening. I can't believe this, he muttered, a shadow creeping over his features. Emma asked, concerned. That's the guy who got me fired, he said, pointing at one of the teenagers who was now laughing obnoxiously at a booth nearby. Emma recognized the anger building inside him again. Was it possible they were watching the same guy? You're better than this, she urged gently. Easy for you to say, he shot back. True, but it doesn't have to be like this, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He stood, fists clenching. You don't understand. Emma felt her heart race as she weighed her options. Could she reach him again, or had the tide turned too forcefully? Wait. Please don't. Before she could finish, he strode toward the group, anger radiating off of him like heat from a flame. Just as he reached the table, the laughter stopped, replaced by puzzled looks. He shouted, his voice cutting through the diner. "You think it's funny?" The teenagers looked taken aback, their smiles fading. "Let's just calm down here," Emma called after him, but it was too late. The man was already standing there, fists clenched, ready for confrontation. The whole diner held its breath, a mix of tension and intrigue filling the air. Emma felt her stomach drop. Would this moment shatter the fragile connection they had built, the kindness she had offered? Greg rushed to intervene. "Back off, man," but the man was caught in a whirlwind of emotions that darkened past, clawing at him. Emma stepped closer, feeling the heat of the moment escalating. "Please don't," and just like that, the tables had turned. The drama in the diner had reached its peak, and all eyes were on them, waiting for the next move in this unexpected clash of pain and anger. The air crackled with tension, and for a split second, Emma wondered how would this end. Would compassion win out, or would old wounds bubble to the surface and create chaos? The future of their encounter and the very nature of understanding hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of confrontation and connection. And in that charged moment, she realized everything could change with a single choice.